They say you never forget your first case, but that's a lie. You forget it because you have to. What you don't forget are the ones that haunt you, the ones that claw their way into your dreams and whisper when you're trying to forget. Mine came back on a rainy Thursday in November. I was 3 years into early retirement, living in a quiet cabin on the edge of nowhere, when the phone rang. It wasn't a number I recognized, but the voice on the other end hit me like a ghost. Detective Callahan? I hadn't heard that name in years. This is Sheriff Monroe. We've found something, up at Millstone Hill. Millstone Hill. A name I'd buried under 1,000 unsolved reports and a bottle of bourbon. Go on, I said, even though every part of me already knew what he was going to say. A body. A young woman. Same spot where Abigail Winslow disappeared, 21 years ago. My hand went cold. Abigail Winslow. The girl who vanished without a trace. The case that broke me. And just like that, I was back in it. Back in the fog. Back in the nightmare. I hadn't been to Millstone in over a decade, but the town hadn't changed. Same crooked gas station by the county line. Same rusted welcome sign with peeling white letters. Millstone, EST 1874. Same fog that never seemed to lift. The sheriff met me at the trailhead. He looked older, gray around the temples, a little slower in the way he moved, but the look in his eyes was the same one I remembered from the last time we stood in these woods. You sure about this? He asked. You walked away for a reason. I never really left, I said, brushing past him toward the crime scene. It was just as I feared. Same clearing. Same silence. Same cold knot in my chest. Only now, instead of nothing, there was someone. A young woman. Early 20s. Dark hair. Pale skin. She was posed, almost deliberately. One hand folded over her chest. Eyes open, staring at the sky. I've seen this before, I muttered. You think it's the same guy? I didn't answer. Not yet. But the signs were all there. I knelt beside her and noticed something glinting under her collar. A necklace. Gold chain. And a tiny charm, an hourglass. My blood ran cold. Abigail Winslow wore the same one. This wasn't just a copycat. This was the same monster. And he just started talking again. Back at the station, I asked for the old files. The sheriff hesitated but handed over a dusty box from evidence storage, its label faded. Abigail Winslow, missing person, 2004. I flipped it open and was hit with the musty scent of time, paper, dust, and regret. There she was. Abigail. 16. Bright eyes, dimpled smile, high school cheer uniform. Vanished on the night of October 14th after practice. No signs of struggle. No footprints. No blood. Just gone. We searched for weeks. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers. I chased every lead, interrogated every classmate, combed through every second of surveillance footage from within 10 miles. Nothing. Until today. I laid the new case file beside Abigail's. The girl from the woods, still unidentified, had the same height, same hair color, and that identical hourglass charm. But her hands, they were marked. Tiny cuts. Almost surgical. Symbols, maybe? Or letters. I'd seen them before. I just couldn't remember where. Did you get prints? I asked Monroe. He nodded. We're running them now. But that's not all. He pulled out a sealed evidence bag. Inside was a Polaroid. Faded, but clear enough. It was Abigail. Tied to a chair. Crying. And dated 2 days after her disappearance. I felt the ground shift under me. We never found this before, Monroe said. It was taped inside the girl's jacket. Whoever killed her had kept Abigail alive. At least for a while. Which meant maybe he kept others too. Maybe, just maybe, Abigail was still alive. The photo changed everything. For 21 years, I believed Abigail died the night she vanished. But the timestamp, clear as day, said otherwise. She was alive, at least until October 16th, 2004. And if the killer kept her, what did he do with the rest of the time? I spread the 2 case files across the desk like a puzzle. Every detail mattered now. The charm. The positioning of the bodies. The hourglass? That symbol, why an hourglass? I jotted the word on a notepad, stared at it. Time. Running out. Controlled. Was that it? Monroe stepped in with a folder. Autopsy report just came in. The victim's name was Emily Reyes. 23. Local college student. Reported missing 6 days ago. No drugs in her system. No bruises, no sexual assault. Just those strange cuts. And cause of death? Exsanguination. She bled out. Slowly. But here's the part that made my skin crawl. The coroner found high levels of ketamine in her system. Enough to immobilize her for days. She was kept alive, I whispered. Just like Abigail. But then came the kicker. Inside Emily's stomach, the coroner found a piece of paper. Swallowed before death. It had one word. Next. One word. 5 letters. Infinite horror. It wasn't just a taunt, it was a promise. I stayed up all night reviewing the files, pacing the old sheriff's office, staring at the board I tacked together with both cases. Strings, photos, maps. I was building a timeline, but the spaces between the dots were too wide. Emily Reyes. Abigail Winslow. 21 years apart. Same location. Same method. Same signature. But what about in between? Monroe, I need access to every missing person case from this county between 2004 and now. Especially ones that went cold. I said the next morning. He sighed. That's over 40 files, Callahan. Then we start now. We divided them up and went through them one by one. Most didn't match the profile. Wrong age. Wrong gender. Wrong region. But 3 stood out. Case number 1. 2009, Rachel Kim, 19. Last seen walking home from a shift at a local diner. Vanished. Case number 2. 2015, Jasmine Holloway, 22. College student. Left a party alone. Never seen again. Case number 3. 2020, Nina Carlton, 20. Reported missing by her roommate. No signs of a struggle. All young women. All from towns within a 30-mile radius of Millstone Hill. All disappeared in October. 5 years apart. Like clockwork. Like an hourglass being turned. My stomach dropped. This isn't random, I muttered. It's ritual. Monroe looked up. You think he's planning another one? I stared at the board, feeling the pieces click into place. No, I said. He already has her. We were already too late. I called the local colleges, focusing on students who had recently gone missing or hadn't shown up to class. One name surfaced almost immediately. Sophie Laramie. 21. Art major. Quiet, punctual. Reported missing 5 days ago. October 25th, same window. Same pattern. The killer had her. I stared at her photo, soft features, dark curls, eyes too bright for this world. She looked like Abigail. Like Emily. Like all of them. Monroe rubbed his temples. No ransom, no messages, no trace. If this guy's holding her, where would he go? You think he has some kind of base? I nodded. Serials like this, they build nests. A place where they control everything. Where they watch time slip through their victims' hands. A sick thought followed. The hourglass? The ketamine. The precision. He wasn't just killing. He was performing. I turned back to the map. Every disappearance, every victim was within a tight radius, but Millstone was the center. What about old properties? I asked. Abandoned homes, hunting cabins, shelters, places off the grid but close enough for him to move unnoticed. Monroe raised an eyebrow. You think he's been living here this whole time? Not living, I said. Hiding. He pulled out a dusty county map. There's one spot no one's used in years. Old Firewatch Station near Calhoun Ridge. Road's blocked now, but it's still up there. My gut twisted. That's where he'd be. With Sophie. And if the 5-year clock still ticked, she had less than 48 hours left. We took the back roads. No sirens. No backup. Just Monroe, me, and the sound of tires crunching gravel. The old Firewatch Station stood deep in the forest, perched like a crow's nest above the tree line. The road up was overgrown, trees bowed in as if trying to hide what was up there. When we reached the gate, we ditched the truck and moved in on foot. The silence was thick. No birds. No wind. Just the sound of our boots on damp earth. And then, we saw it. A cabin. Weather-beaten. Slouched. Windows blacked out. An antenna jutting from the roof like a broken bone. Monroe looked at me. We go quiet? No, I said. He already knows we're here. I raised my flashlight and stepped onto the porch. The door creaked open with a whisper that echoed into the trees. The air inside was cold. Sterile. Not a home, an operating room. Plastic sheets hung from the ceiling like curtains. The floor was spotless. In the center, a chair. Straps on the arms. A table beside it with surgical tools, ropes, vials. And an hourglass. Half full. Still running. Clear the rooms, I said, voice tight. We moved together, methodical, clearing the back rooms, empty. Storage, empty. Basement, locked. I kicked the door in. And that's when we heard it. A sob. Muffled. Weak. We rushed down. There she was. Sophie. Alive. Barely. Shackled to a pipe, for in her arm, eyes wide with terror. Monroe rushed to her side, calling in medics. But I froze. Because on the wall behind her, written in thick black marker, were 6 names. Abigail. Rachel. Jasmine. Nina. Emily. Sophie. And underneath them, one last word. Detective. We got Sophie out. Alive, but shaken. The paramedics said if we'd been a day later, maybe even hours, she wouldn't have made it. I stayed behind. That room, it wasn't just a prison. It was a message. Every inch of it was designed to unnerve, to warn, to accuse. The names on the wall haunted me. Not just because I knew them, but because of what followed underneath. Detective. Not. Cop. Not. Callahan. Not. You. He knew me. I walked back upstairs, scanning every inch for something I missed. Monroe was helping secure the scene when I found it. A box. Old. Wooden. Locked. Hidden beneath the floorboards under the hourglass table. I pried it open with my knife. Inside were 6 Polaroids. 1 for each girl. All dated, all taken within days of their disappearances. Each one had the same symbol drawn on the back in red ink, an hourglass with a crack through it. But there was a 7th photo. Me. Younger. From years ago. Standing at Abigail's original crime scene. And scribbled on the back. You left her. You let her die. I dropped the photo, my breath catching in my throat. The room tilted. Whoever he wasn't just a killer. He was personal. This wasn't about the girls anymore. This was about me. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I sat in the station with the photo of myself in one hand and a bottle of black coffee in the other, replaying every mistake I'd ever made. Every door I didn't knock on. Every hunch I didn't follow. Every case that ended with unknown suspect. Who was he? How did he know me? Why wait 21 years? The sheriff came in around dawn. We got something, he said, handing me a slim file. You're gonna want to sit for this. DNA from the cabin had come back. Hair. Blood. Skin cells. Most matched the victims. But one didn't. It matched a John Doe. Unidentified male. Deceased. 2006. Found in the woods outside town. Suicide. Case closed. Only it wasn't. I remember this. I muttered. He hanged himself. Left no ID. We figured he was passing through. Monroe nodded. You were lead on that case. I opened the file and stared at the autopsy photo. The man had hollow cheeks, sunken eyes. Gaunt. Like he'd been starving himself. There was something familiar about the eyes. I flipped through the file, and then I saw it. The photo of what he had in his pockets. A receipt. For 2 gallons of milk. A pack of cigarettes. And a necklace. An hourglass charm. But if that was him, then who was in the cabin? I stared back at the Polaroid of me. And then it hit me. He wasn't the killer. He was the first victim. The killer didn't start in 2004. He started long before. I went back to the original files, before Abigail. Before Millstone. I dug through old archives, town records, case logs from nearby counties. And that's when I found it. 1997, Crescent Falls. 2 missing women. Identical M.O., same symbols. Same hourglass charm. But no connection was ever made. Why? Because back then, the case was solved. The killer had a name, Benjamin Hale. Local drifter. Arrested in '98 after one of the victims managed to escape and ID him. He was sentenced to life in prison and died behind bars in 2003. But here's the twist. Benjamin Hale had a son. Elias Hale. Born in '92. Just 12 years old when his father was arrested. No records after that, just disappeared from the system. I checked the suicide John Doe again. Estimated age at time of death? 34. That was Elias. The son. The first victim. But that means someone else picked up the legacy. Someone learned from Benjamin. Watched Elias die. And decided to carry on the cycle. A third killer. Smarter. Colder. Invisible. But then something else struck me like a bolt of lightning. All 6 victims? All were last seen within 2 blocks of my home address, whether in town or out. He wasn't just copying his predecessors. He was watching me. And now that I'd found Sophie, he knew I was close. Which meant he was coming. We put Sophie under protective custody. She barely spoke, trauma too deep, fear too raw, but before she was taken, she grabbed my wrist and whispered 2 words. He smiles. That chilled me more than anything. A monster who smiled. We traced every connection we could, Elias Hale, Benjamin Hale, the victims, but we kept hitting walls. No fingerprints. No photos. Nothing but shadows. Until I found something strange. The new deputy in Millstone, quiet guy, early 30s, name was Gregory Lane, he transferred in last year from another county. Clean record. Polite. Helpful. But he'd never once asked about the case. Not when Emily was found. Not when Sophie was taken. Most of the department was obsessed. But not him. And then I remembered something Sophie said under sedation. He wore a uniform. That was enough for me. I pulled his personnel file. There was a glitch. His transfer paperwork was missing the photo ID page. I ran his fingerprints from a cup he'd used at the station through the federal database. Hit. Not Gregory Lane. Lucas Hale. Another son. Benjamin's grandson. The legacy wasn't just continuing. It was evolving. I armed myself, told Monroe to stay out of it, and waited in my cabin. I knew he'd come. He wanted it to end where it started. And around midnight, I heard the floorboard creak behind me. I turned. He stood in my doorway, calm, smiling. "Detective Callahan," he said. "Took you long enough." He didn't run. Didn't flinch. Just stood there, smiling, like we were old friends catching up after years apart. "Why?" I asked, my voice low. Not trembling. Not afraid. Just tired. Lucas Hale took a step forward. Because justice skipped a generation. My grandfather paid. My father died screaming in a forest. But you. He pointed a finger at me. You walked away. And they forgot. I didn't forget, I said. No. He smiled wider. But you let her die. He reached into his coat, and my hand went to my holster, but he didn't draw a weapon. He pulled out something small. Round. Glass. An hourglass. He placed it on the table between us and turned it. You have until the sand runs out, he said. Ask me anything. I stared at it, the grains falling like whispers of every girl he'd taken. How many? I asked. He tilted his head. 12. 12? I whispered. Some you never found. Some you never looked for. And Sophie? I asked. He grinned. She wasn't the final girl. She was bait. For you. I realized then, he wanted to be caught. Not for justice. Not for guilt. But because he wanted me to know he'd won. For 20 years, he danced in the shadows of my failures. Lived in the cracks of the case I never closed. I stood gun drawn. Don't, he said softly. I want you to live with it. But I didn't shoot. I picked up the hourglass, smashed it on the table. No more time, I said. The sirens echoed through the trees minutes later. He surrendered quietly. Smiling. Epilogue. Lucas Hale was sentenced to life without parole. He never spoke again. Sophie recovered. Slowly. She paints now, dark forests, broken glass, girls with hourglasses in their eyes. I return to Millstone once a year. To leave flowers where Abigail was found. To remember the girls. And to remind myself. Justice isn't about catching monsters. It's about never letting them win.